This is the front drive shaft on a 2000 Ram 4x4, and you can see right in here our U-joint is totally destroyed there, so we have to change that out. We're going to have to remove these saddles here that hold it in place, and that's going to be a 5/16 head. I tried getting these bolts here with a combination wrench, and the box end didn't want to fit on one side. It would fit on fine this side, but it wouldn't fit on this side. I ended up using a socket and ratchet because it's got a smaller diameter in there. I was able to fit in there and remove those two saddles. What I've got here is a bar, and it's going in through here, and the handle goes up against our lower control arm, and that's just going to hold this still. Now this is in two-wheel drive, so this is going to be free turning here. Here on the opposite side, that's a 16mm wrench, and I'm using that location as the only spot that I can get that long wrench in for leverage. So I have the bar holding the opposite side as I work on the bolts here. I'll continue to do that same location for all 4 bolts. Once I get this one out, I'll turn it around, and then I'll reset my bar on the other end, and then I'll remove the next bolt. I'm always going to have that wrench in that location to remove those bolts, because that is the only spot that I can get the full length of the wrench fit in there. Here you can see where we have that deflector shield under there, and that's in our way, trying to remove those bolts on that end of the drive shaft there. All of this is in the way, and even if you remove that cover, that saddle in there is still going to prevent you from getting any tools in there. And you're also not going to be able to get in a socket and extension with a swivel, because there's just not enough room. Again, we're going to be 16mm for the head on these 4 bolts here. This end over here, I was 5/16. Once everything's disconnected, I'm going to put my pry bar in there. I'm going to pry off the yoke to disengage that from the yoke. You can see here where the U-joint is totally shot. All the needles are out of this one, probably out of that one too, and you can see where it's rocking back and forth. I'm going to use the zippy disc. I'm going to slice it here and here, and once I remove this out of here, then I'm going to pound out the 2 ends, and then we're ready to install the new one. Got that cut out with the zippy disc, and now all we got to do is pop them caps out. We'll remove these lock pins here on both sides. We're just going to use some pliers to pinch those together and pull those out, and then we'll just use a hammer and punch. We're going to punch these caps out both ends. I got it set up in the vise here where it's resting against the bottom, so then that way when you're hammering this down, that's supporting it. I've used a blunt chisel to loosen up that ring. Then I used a flathead screwdriver to pry in and get in behind it, pry that out of there. Once we got that out, then again we're going to use the blunt chisel and the hammer, and we're going to hammer it out that way. You can see where it is there, and you can see all the remnants of the needles from the bearing as well. This side come out no problem. We got a straight run from the other one that was removed coming down, so it came out easy. The other one we had to work on from an angle to get at, but either way, they both come out fairly easily. Use a little heat, use a little penetrating oil if you have to, but they should come out relatively easy. We're going to clean out the bores where the U-joint's going to slide in there. We're also going to clean out that groove for the snap ring. I'm going to use a flat end screwdriver, and I'm going to work it in there, and I'm going to pry out all that garbage. You want both components really clean before reassembly. Here's the new U-joint right here. You can see this one has a grease zerk on it, so we can grease it. The other one had no grease zerk on there, and that's why they fail, is because you're not able to grease them and lubricate them, and if you can lubricate them, make them last longer. Here's a part number for anyone who's interested. I'm going to coat those bores with an anti-seize product. That's going to help us with installation. Next, I'm going to remove 2 caps. You can see them there. And I'm going to install the centerpiece inside the center of the yoke. Then I'll take both of those caps and I'll install them on the outsides at the same time. Line everything up and get it started together. You'll have to watch that the needles don't fall out as you're assembling this. The grease should hold it in place. You just got to be patient and take your time as you assemble this so that everything goes together properly. We slowly installed the caps on the top and the bottom at the same time, lining everything up, and in fact everything went together by hand, and that would be because we've cleaned out the bores and we've used that anti-seize, and everything is going together really nice. We're going to take our ring here, we're going to squeeze that together with a pair of needle nose pliers. And once we've done that, we're going to get it started in there. You can see where the edge is still at the top here, and I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver to seat that down and make sure it goes into the recess. When you're seating that into the groove, you might need to use a screwdriver and hammer and just tap on the edge of that. Make sure that it's seated inside that groove really well all the way around. We could be done here because that was the U-joint that needed to be changed. We can also change these two on the opposite end just to be sure that we have all new parts and everything is consistent. On this side, we've removed those lock pins, and I'm just using the vise to press these U-joints out of place. On this side here, I just have a piece of round stock that fits in there close to the outside bore of that U-joint. That's so the outside diameter of the U-joint will float inside of the socket here. So you can see where we've broken it loose right there. We've got this in the vise and flipped over, but what happens is when we're pushing this out, this cap is going to be sticking out, not all the way, but most of the way. And then you want to grab it with something and you want to work it off of there. Now that this cap is worked off of that side, you can see all we're doing is we're just articulating our U-joints here until we have it like this so that we can pull off this bottom cap. So we've got that bottom cap articulated out past here. We should be able to twist this off as well, and then this should come out. Now inside there's going to be a pin and ball assembly as well. Here are those two caps. Here's that piece there. There's a ball that swivels around inside here. And here there's the spring and the pin, and then this is where that ball is riding around inside here. Now I don't have a new one of those. The best thing I can do is clean everything up and reassemble it. This one wasn't in very good shape either. It's all rusted and dry, no good. Once we remove that one cap, we can simply twist that and lift that out of there. Here's another look at our setup here. We just have a small piece of round right there because the jaws can only open up so far. And then we got our socket here. And as we tighten that up, that's gonna press that in and press that out. And then we can get at that cap, work that cap off. Once we've worked the cap off, then we should be able to get the U-joint out entirely. We've got the last one removed and we've got all those components cleaned up here. You'll see some grinding down in here. When I was removing this, it kind of deformed some of the metal in here on a couple of the sides. What happened with this one, because there's a little more meat in here for the bore, we had to push one side out, pull the cap out, and then push it out the other way. Admittedly, I had to use some penetrating oil and some heat. I also ended up using a pipe here, and that pipe is for my handle on the vise. Put that pipe on there, just get a little more leverage and pull on that, and you'll hear some pops and some noise, but it'll come free. We're going to use a C-clamp. It is going in nice, no real troubles there, but we need the C-clamp to get that together. I'm going to press this end in. I'm going to put in my clip on this side. Once the clip is on this side, I'm going to flip it, and that is just the right size to be on the inside of the bore there, and then push that cap in. We've got one more we got to remove here, so again we're using that socket on this side. We've got a small round on that side just because that vise won't open up far enough to put another socket in there. So we've got to start off with this small piece, and then after that we could, if we had to, switch it over to a socket to press it out further. We've got the U-joint installed into the drive shaft there. We have the other one installed into our end piece, and now we'll work on this one to connect both of them together. We're firstly going to put this one on there, and then we're going to install that one, which also has to get incorporated with this piece here. Try to see that center section there. That was pretty difficult going in. Well, we lubricated it before we put it in. Remember, there was a little spring in the pin. You put that in there, align everything up, really play with it to get it all fit together, and then after it was fit together, it made it difficult to install these caps on here because that articulation back there was basically give more friction and resistance to line everything up here, to press it together. But once we got it pressed together, it all went together pretty good. One of the needle bearings on this cap here kind of fell out of place, so we had to disassemble it and then reassemble it again. So you just want to be careful when you're putting it all together. Take your time, be patient, and put it all together by hand, and it should go together fairly well. That center section in there's a bunch of needle bearings in it, the same as these caps here. So when you line that up and put it in there, you kind of struggle to get everything lined up and put back together. One thing I would recommend when you're disassembling everything is to find something of the same diameter and put that in there and hold that in there so your needles don't come out. Mine came out and it took me a long time to put them back in. The good news was it was in pretty good shape, so we could reuse it. We'll take a look at our U-joints here. That was the one we cut out, and then we replaced these two as well. You can see that one was in bad shape. And when we take a look at our caps here, we've probably got about 50% of them that were in bad shape, dry or destroyed. I prefer to change all of them so that they're all matching new components. We've cleaned up all of our fasteners for reassembly. I'm going to use anti-seize on mine. Some people might want to use a blue Loctite on them smaller ones. I don't like to do that because then if you strip out the head, you're in some real trouble there. I use anti-seize on everything, but I clean everything up first. Now all we got to do is reinstall it. Even though we have U-joints with grease nipples, you're not going to be able to grease this while it's installed into the vehicle, because you have to articulate this knuckle here in order to get your fitting in so that you can reach the grease nipple in there. I give this thing 4 shots. That's going to be 1 for each end of the U-joint here. It's greased before we install it. Another thing I like to do is throw some black tape around the joint here, so then that's going to keep these caps on while you're transporting it and working on the other end. The caps aren't going to fall off and then the needles fall out, cause you a bunch of problems. If you can't get any leverage because there's no room in here to tighten them bolts, what I suggest is you put that wrench up against something, like I have it on the bottom frame part here. And then I'm going to use a bar in the front, and I'm going to pull on that bar, pull or push on that bar to tighten those bolts, and that's how I'm going to get those back ones tight. 16 millimeter for the back, and then I was using a 5/16 for the front, but it could be a 8 millimeter as well. So tighten those bolts down, and that's it.